Little update here. I got back yesterday evening, and on the way back, the bike started. So on the way there, I noticed every time I turned on my signal light, it got a boost of power. So I stopped and unplugged the signal light relay, and it went like a bat out of hell. Then on the way back, it was acting really strange, and then it started to only work good on high beam. And so I knew then, like, there was something electrically wrong with this thing. You know, it wasn't a fuel pump issue. It's getting lots of fuel, which I always thought it was. So I just tore into this. I tore off the headlight here. And there's 3 butt connectors here. I never looked too far yet at where it all went. But there's one wire that's just completely fell right off. So there's definitely been some aftermarket wiring going on in this bike. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that once I figure out where the short is or where the wire's disconnected and I get this bike wired back up properly again, I'm sure I can put the signal light relay back on. I'm sure I can put the fuel pump relay back on, and I'm confident that I can put that stock fuel pump back on and get this whole bike back to original and running well. And I'm crossing my fingers that I can. That would be very nice. And then, if and when that happens, I think I'm going to, possibly, don't quote me on this, but I have an idea to put a set of hard bags on this, and possibly a batwing fairing, and possibly one of those sandbars, and have some tunes on this thing. So I don't know. It's pretty funny for a bike that I originally bought to build into a chopper, and they didn't have the heart to cut it apart, and now I think I might make it into a bagger, into a batwing fairing bagger. I'm not sure, but one thing at a time. I'm going to work on getting the wiring right, getting it running right, and then getting this all back to original, so there's no homemade crap going on with the fuel pump and everything else. So I just wired that part of it up just for the sake of isolating variables. Fuel pump, then it started acting up, so then I bypassed the relay, and there was never really any major intent on running it like that forever. I was just trying to isolate variables and get to the bottom of kind of what was going on with this thing. So that wire right there was unhooked and I took it apart. So I'm going to see where those wires go, follow some wires a bit, and just kind of do some testing and tuning this evening. And hopefully, man, I can get her figured out and running again. It'd be nice. Looks like the stock harness is kind of all taped up before, and there's been wiring happening there. So it's definitely been an ongoing problem. So that's why the bike changed 2 hands very quickly, and why it was such a good deal, and maybe why it's got such low mileage. It's got some gremlin. It's got an electrical gremlin in there somewhere. And, you know, it's a good bike. The motor is great. It doesn't smoke. It doesn't burn any oil. It's a good machine, and it's definitely worth saving. So, you know, sometimes I get discouraged with this thing, and I get looking at other bikes online. But, you know, I'm just going to stay determined. I'm just going to save the old girl, because it's already brought me a long way. It's already brought me 14,000 kilometers so far this summer, and I think that I can get it running properly and get it fixed up and kind of transform it into more of a touring bike, and it's going to be good. So that's the dream. On the way home, I stopped and I pulled this off, and I just ran it with that hanging and high beam only. And it's weird. The whole time I had this bike, every time change the fuel pump, it worked good for a while. Bypass the relay, worked good for a while. Unhook the tail light signal, worked good for a while. Let that hang down, worked good for a while. You change anything in the system, and it works good for a while, and then it just goes back. So I don't know if it's and another thing, I don't know if you can see it down here. It's probably too dark, but you can kind of see it faintly. My finger's touching it. That is, I think it's the regulator rectifier or something or other, but it's like a heat sink type construction. And this aftermarket exhaust, because usually the exhaust goes back to the side, it runs right close to that. So I'm kind of half thinking, is the exhaust heating that up and screwing something up with the electrical? I'm not sure. So I think I want to get some heat tape, or maybe I could relocate that. Either relocate it or wrap that exhaust in asbestos tape or something, and try to just isolate that variable. But for right now, I'm just going through all the wiring and checking that out. I already found one fault, so maybe I'll get lucky. So that's my update with that. And yeah, I had a great trip to Kootenai Lake. It was fantastic, and I definitely want to get, another couple of lengthy trips in this summer before the summer's out. So I got to get hustling and get this old girl back together. All right, we'll talk to you later. Update. So that wire that was disconnected was actually for this signal light, and it was a black and white one, but then the wires on the other end that went into the plug were a different color. So he must have got this signal light or something at a salvage yard and had a different plug on it. So he must have snipped it and just put a different one on. And then that connection came loose. And it was weird because the signal lights worked for the most part, but sometimes you would turn the one and turn that way and it wouldn't flash, it would just stay on. But it would really draw the engine down every time it flashed. And then the bike was working bad and I turned the signal light on, it would get a boost of power. So anyways, I hooked that back up and it alleviated that issue. But then still didn't seem to run quite right. Like, you still had to keep the RPMs up or else it would start backfiring. But when you put it on high beam, it would work way better. And low beam, it was just crap. So then I was going to, the wires that ran down to that switch went into here. I found which one it was, and I was unpulling the wires, and it was a black with a white striped wire going from the switch to the headlight. I went to unplug it, and it just pulled apart easy, like it was loose. So I stuck it back together. I obviously had the tail light wire, or the signal light wire fixed. So I just buttoned it all back up, and I took it for a drive just to see. And it ran fantastic. Like, it ran like a fuel-injected 2018. I was slowing right down on the highway in top gear, letting the lug up, pull out of the hole, and it was running, no problem. So I was like, frig yeah. So I wanted to take it to top speed, because at around 145 kilometers an hour, it was sputtering out, and it should be a bit faster than that. So I wanted to get it up to top speed, but there was a car in my way, so I couldn't get up to speed. So then I had to loop around again, and coming back, I noticed as the bike got warmer, when you turn on your signal light, there'd still be a bit of a surge. The lights wouldn't dim, just the engine would surge. And it's same as high beam to low beam, just a bit after it got warmed up. But when it was cold, it didn't. So I'm thinking that box that's down here, oh no, I don't want to burn my hand there, but it's just right ahead of the battery box. It's in there anyways. It's right close, like almost touching the exhaust. So I'm thinking, see, because normally the exhaust doesn't run through there. The stock exhaust on this is just one on each side. This is an aftermarket exhaust that cuts through. So I'm thinking I need to get that box out of there and put it somewhere where it can stay cool. And I think, it's worth a shot. And right now, I am going to get crazy and hook up this guy. The stock fuel pump and the stock fuel pump relay. I'm going to put those back in and just see what happens. And if, I think if I can get that box moved away somewhere where it can stay cool and put that stock pump on, I'm crossing my fingers that this thing is going to run. And if it does, oh man, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to have big plans for this bike if I can get this thing working good. So that's really good news, and I'll do that work, and we'll try her again. Update. So last night I took and I put the stock fuel pump back on with the stock fuel pump relay, and sure enough, it didn't work worth a crap. So then I took and I just had that wiring and the toggle switch still hooked direct to the battery that was from the other fuel pump. So I took and just hooked the stock fuel pump up direct on that switch, and then this morning I took it for a drive, and it ran just fantastically. It ran really good, so that's good. It's likely just the fuel pump relay that it needs. You know, there is a small chance that it's the wiring to the relay, but so I guess I'll go to Suzuki and order a relay, I suppose. Besides that, we got signal lights and high beam, low beam, horn. It's all working good, but I am going to relocate that other thing though, because it just runs so close to the exhaust, and I can notice a difference in the electronics when the bike gets real warm, because I think that thing's supposed to be hanging down underneath to, you know, to get cooled off. Now that exhaust is blocking it, and it's getting heat from it. So I am going to see about relocating that, or even just wrapping that exhaust in heat tape right there. And other than that, man, I'm pretty happy. It's happy that I'm able to get it back to original with all that homemade crap on there, and happy that it's running good. So that's really great. And there's definitely more to come on this bike for sure. So here's a relocated bracket here, mounted on. Looks pretty good. I think there's decent clearance for the wire here. And see under. Can you see it or not? Let's just use that guard I made that just hangs down a little bit lower to protect it. That looks pretty good, and I think that should work good. And then while I was at it, I just went ahead and built this quick little foot peg here. Bolts on there. Nothing too fancy, but at least I have a foot peg now. It's it sits pretty good. You know, it's only an old cheap bike, so I don't spend too much money on it. It's all about function and the ability to go on long trips for cheap.